Andrew Hattersley and Carter Karels here, wrapping up SEC Media Days. Day 4, Texas A&M took the stage here. Carter, day 4, Mike Elko joined by Shamar Turner, Torian York, and Trey Zune heading into Dallas at the Omni Hotels. A lot to take away from the day in many regards. Got a couple different opportunities to speak to the staff and players in different settings. Carter, what'd you kind of take away from the day? What were some of the big things?
Biggest thing to me was what Mike Elko said throughout was that, hey, this has been a quiet off season, and that's awesome, right? I think if you look at the past few off seasons for Texas A&M and even the past few seasons, been a lot of drama, been a lot of off the field stuff.
Yeah.
You just think back to a year ago, the whole conversation was, is Bobby Petrino going to call the plays? And Jimbo Fisher, his responses did not inspire a lot of confidence. It was a lot of, oh, yeah, we'll see, kind of thing. And this time, Mike Elko was straight and to the point, kind of boring, which I think was actually a breath of fresh air, and I think was by design. I think this A&M team didn't really want to be in the news this offseason, but not only that, just the job that Elko and the Aggies have done this offseason, not just retaining a lot of the top talent on the roster, but bringing in one of the best transfer portal classes. They did a great job of making it to where this wouldn't be a rebuild, where they could contend in 2024. And so that was part of the message as well. And certainly, there's a lot of things to be excited about for those guys today.
Kind of one of those points that stuck out to me as well was when he talked about, on that note, right, about the accountability and the discipline, talking about how the work is done in the offseason and they needed to start doing the work between now and when fall camp opens in a couple of weeks to then reap the rewards of that success on the field. I took that as kind of, okay, we need to go to work, and it needs to start in the spring. And, we talked to the players earlier in the day. They talked about some of those sort of challenges and punishments, right? If discipline and accountability ran afoul, there was consequences, and it took a couple weeks for some, a couple months, but I really did get the sense that discipline and accountability message has kind of rung through to the rest of the players.
Yeah, Tommy Moffitt was a name that was mentioned a ton today by, I think, every player, by Mike Elko. His big message with Tommy Moffitt, who obviously made a huge name for himself at LSU and Tennessee and Miami, his message was, hey, yes, he might be a little bit older. Yes, he might have been around, but this is not some old school, outdated guy. This is somebody that pours into the science, pours into the analytics. I'm going to have a story on him later before the season, just talking about the new age stuff that he does. But you've seen the impact that it has had on this roster. You look at the updated heights and weights, and pretty significant for some guys. Donovan Green gained 20 pounds, right? We talked to Shamar Turner today, gained 30 pounds. Blake Ivy, the freshman O-lineman, he gained 30 pounds. So, a lot of weight changes, a lot of guys, looking at Shamar Turner today, just looked a lot more slim, but gained 30 pounds.
Weight well.
It was crazy. So, you can definitely see the impact that he's having.
You know what else was really talked about a lot, right? Texas was brought up over and over and over again, to the players, to the coaches. There were a lot of questions about Texas, obviously, the game. Torian York was asked, I was kind of on the Torian York train of going to multiple of his press conferences. He must have been asked multiple times about, was he ever recruited by Texas? And did Texas ever contact him? And why were they not involved in his recruitment? Texas really was at the center of kind of all, the A&M question, which was what we expected was going to be the case. What did you kind of take away from the way the Texas A&M players answered those questions about Texas?
It was interesting, just kind of the difference between today and yesterday. Texas spoke yesterday, and they got a ton of A&M questions, right? And Kelvin Banks was someone who, heavily considered A&M. Quinn Ewers grew up in the state of Texas, and when we asked those guys about it, they usually, it's just another game. And Quinn Ewers, he did say that his dad growing up thought that, hey, this is a bigger rivalry than Texas OU. So he did say that. But not a lot of shots getting taken at A&M, whereas the A&M players, you could tell that, hey, this is a game circled on the calendar. I mean, it is obviously for both,
No
but they were just more outspoken about it. But Torrey in
doubt.
York, today he said, hey, this is personal for me.
Yep.
Because for him, he wasn't recruited by Texas, and A&M came in at the last minute. But as a 3-star recruit from Temple, Texas, that guy's always had a chip on his shoulder. He was someone who was highly productive all 4 years in high school, and didn't get that offer from Texas. So it's deserved to feel that way, and it's interesting to see him feel motivated with that. Trey Zune also understandably hates Texas because he grew up as a Texas A&M fan. His parents both went to Texas A&M. I believe his grandfather was a professor at A&M. He's got aunts and uncles that went to Texas A&M. So it's been in his blood all of his life to hate Texas. Now, the interesting thing with him that he talked about was he said he went online. He doesn't even remember where he got it, but he bought a picture of a Longhorn, put it right next to his bed in his bedroom, and flipped it upside down.
Yep.
He did that this off season, and he also mentioned that growing up, going to stores and stuff, he'd see a Texas Longhorns hat, he'd turn it upside down. So, just kind of funny to hear. Sometimes you ask players these questions, and they're like, "Oh, it's just another game, and we got to focus on Notre Dame, game 1." No, they were happy
ready for
to dish on it a little bit today, so it was all fun.
You had one of the SEC media guys kind of joke, all right, I'm going to pretend I didn't hear that part about the horns down, and we're going to – and even Shamar Turner a little bit. He's recruited Texas A&M and Texas were heavily involved in both of those recruitments, and he talked a little bit about that, didn't necessarily talk about, the game having an extra chip on his shoulder, maybe the way that Torrey in York and Trey Zune did, but you could tell they were clearly prepared for those questions. They clearly knew they were probably coming and got a lot of them throughout the course of the day. And, one of the other points I think is important to note there on just the way they answered the question was by the end of the day, a lot of the questions, and Mike Elko kind of said this off the bat too, there's a lot of questions about Texas at the end of November. This team's got to worry about Notre Dame August 31st first, and worry about that and that game to begin the season before you start worrying about Texas and some of those games down the line. They got to worry about starting the season off right, and that was one of the big themes as well that I took away. Let's run down the list of players, and we've got plenty more coming to the site over the course of the day, so I encourage you guys to head over and check out. Let's start with Trey Zune and move through the players. What did you kind of take away more from his conversations and what you kind of heard from him?
Biggest thing with Trey Zune is, look, the guy before last season was, I thought, unfairly criticized. Yep. He began his career with a litany of injuries. I wrote about it at the time. I remember before the 2022 season, it was like a dislocated knee, a torn labrum, some other sprain. It was just he had a concussion against Alabama that year. I think he had the flu at one point or COVID at one point in the season. So he could never get himself right. And so when he wasn't playing very well in 2022, not everyone knew about that because he kept playing and he never said that he was hurt. Yeah. But he was hurt. And so we saw last season he took that big step and really was a pretty quality O-lineman for Texas A&M, at least relative to the rest of the O-line, which really struggled. He talked about the fact that, hey, this is the first healthy offseason he's had. This is going to be his 4th season at Texas A&M. So for this to be, the first fully healthy offseason is pretty remarkable. And then he also talked about, he said he's pissed off about the O-line play the last couple of years, and just seeing what happened, how much that held the team back, just as a leader of the team, did not sit well with him. And, mentioned the change with Adam Cushing as the O-line coach, and just what he's done with this O-line. He talks about just how much of a detail-oriented guy he is, and really gets them to focus on things that they didn't focus on previously, and just how big of a deal that's been for them. Tommy Moffitt obviously was mentioned quite a bit with just how much they improved in the weight room and staying healthy and being more nimble to prevent injuries. So certainly that's one of the big questions going into the season. Can this offensive line finally take that step forward, finally be where they were, 2020, even 2021? They were a pretty decent group. And certainly they got a lot of experience up front, and that'll be, I think, probably what determines the success and failure for this team, because that's what's determined the success and failure for them the last couple seasons.
No doubt. And he was asked, I think when Mike Elko was just starting his session, he was kind of asked off to the side in another room, what's going to define a Mike Elko program? And he said it's discipline and accountability, and it goes to being on time for meals. They have meals 3 times a day as a team, being on time to those sorts of things, being on time to workouts, being at training sessions, and then we talked a little bit about the rest of the offensive line as well, and mentioned Chase Basantis as a guy that's had a good offseason. Amraj Reed was a guy that came up quite a bit as having a good offseason. Mark Naboo as well. And then in terms of the newcomers, he raved about Ashton Funk and what Ashton Funk has done. And that's, we've heard that throughout kind of the offseason, about the offseason that Ashton Funk has had. So, we talked about Adam Cushing, and he said he just loves like the detail that Adam Cushing pays to coach him, and kind of the level that he demands from his players. Shamar Turner is kind of an interesting one because he's been here through it all, right? He started with Mike Elko as the defensive coordinator. Mike Elko's back now as the head coach, and he was actually recruited as a defensive tackle in terms of what would fit his body size. He's making the move back there full time now. Yeah. And Mike Elko kind of talked about that was where it was originally the plan was for him to play inside. He's making the move back. Seems like he's pretty excited about that move and feels like it's a chance for him to really thrive.
Yeah, Shamar Turner is one of those guys where kind of a tweener, right? You don't know exactly where to put him, but wherever you put him, he's a really dang good player. So I think of it from the standpoint of what it enables you to do on D-line. Because if you got to point out the best 4 defensive linemen, it's probably Shamar Stewart, Nick Scordon, Shamar Turner, and DJ Hicks. So to slide him inside, you're getting your 4 best guys on the field. Shamar Turner also talked about gaining 30 pounds. And not only did he gain 30 pounds, but he did that despite being hurt for much of the offseason so far. He said he wasn't fully healthy until 3 to 4 weeks ago. Said he got put on a Chipotle diet.
I know. We've heard about the Chipotle diet a little bit. Man, 6 tacos.
Me and Shamar Turner, we're the same person. Because I'm on that Chipotle diet too, and I've also gained 30 pounds and probably the same time. So, we're the same. But he had a big decision to make after last season, because I really think he could have been a top 100 pick in the 2024 NFL draft. Getting him back, I thought, outside of Nick Scordon joining the roster, it's probably the biggest, news that A&M got all offseason. And so to have him back, this defensive line is going to be nasty. I mean, I really think they're not getting enough praise right now, because you could literally see all 4 of those guys being first-round picks one day, or at least top 2-round picks. Like, that's a very talented group. I think, are all of them former 5s? No, Nick Scordon wasn't. But he's a 5-star transfer technically, I guess. So, but anyway, to have that talent up front and then just the depth behind them, it's going to be a scary group.
And I thought there was some of the fun banter, right, between Trey Zune was asked a lot about going against Shamar Turner, and he always kind of ended with, but I did win a few reps. Like I did get a few wins in there. So, the competition and the banter there. And another thing that kind of caught my eye when he was talking about Tommy Moffitt, and we've talked about this a lot when it comes to Connor Wigman, is even though he was recovering from a couple mentioned leg lower body surgery that he went through and a shoulder surgery, Shamar Turner still was in the weight room kind of working through things and still able to put on the 30 pounds. And we've talked about it before, about not taking days off and not kind of just sitting off to the side, but still doing what you can, even though you're recovering from a couple. I took that as a way as kind of that's the way this new program kind of operates. It becomes
Yeah.
tough. So we talked about a lot in the spring.
Well, and think about Connor Wigman, right? This
Yeah.
is somebody that is coming off a pretty significant injury. When you think about the recovery time being over 6 months for him,
Yep.
It required surgery, right? It happened last September against Auburn, and he didn't sit out in the spring. He went to practice. He was throwing the ball. Now, of course, quarterbacks don't get hit, and he did have some limited, mobility. They didn't have him running around a whole bunch, but for him to go out there, I mean, one wrong step, you can risk an injury, right? And or re-injury. And so I thought it was awesome that he came out there and competed and showed, hey, and the fact that like he's perceived as the submitted starter, and yet he still went out there and did that, I think is great. I think that's something this program's been missing the last, couple of years, that competition aspect. We even asked Elko about it today. He was talking about how Wigman's healthy now, completely good to go. And we asked him, hey, is he the starter? Is he like submitted, right? And he said, yes, for day one of fall camp, like he's going to be the starter, right? But there's always going to be competition.
Yeah.
And, he said it would take a crazy preseason camp from Marcel Reed or Jalen Henderson to usurp him. But the fact that he's saying, like, this is his job, but it's also, still going to be a competition. I think that's refreshing to hear, because I think a lot of coaches will try to say either, oh, he's the starter and there's no competition, or they'll say, oh, there's competition when there's really not a competition. Right. And so you see that, and I think the fact it's validated through him practicing throughout the spring.
And the other piece of good news that came out of that, and on that note, Mike Elko saying today that Connor Wigman is healthy, running around, kind of really sounded pretty much full go,
yep.
Which was where Mike Elko said coming out of the spring, they knew he was going to get to this point. It was just a matter of doing it, and it sounds like, Connor Wigman's back to running, and they're very, very happy with the way he has progressed so far, which is great news for A&M. Torian York, the final one, and there were obviously a lot of eyes on him as a sophomore, coming off a really good freshman year. What'd you take away from what he said?
I'm always just blown away the fact that the kid's only 19 years old.
19 years old, and so mature.
Yeah, I'm thinking back when I was 19 years old, and I'm just like, that's not good.
Yeah.
And so very impressed with that guy. And to be a sophomore, obviously coming here is impressive, but he's also a captain of the team, only one of two captains, right? There was only two that were named. So thought that was highly impressive. And, he was very outspoken about where he feels about the Texas rivalry. I asked him about what happened in his hometown, Temple, earlier this offseason. Was ravaged by the tornadoes, and a lot of houses were, torn up. And he had said that he was kind of stuck there and they didn't have power. And, that kind of taught him to he learned to kind of appreciate things more and not take things for granted during that time. And, I thought that was really cool. And obviously for him, one of the interesting things he said was, last season he came in as an early enrollee, and it seemed seamless for him. It just seemed like he picked up everything. And he was asked today about, the comparison between that and this season. And he mentioned, hey, it's actually harder this season because Jay Bateman, the defensive coordinator, his defense is a lot more complex and harder to learn. So I still expect him to take another step, but it may take a bit for this defense to kind of master that scheme, it sounds like.
Yeah.
He also won't be playing next to Edgerrin Cooper, which, obviously was a huge benefit for that defense last season. And, you look at that position, it's one of the big questions going into this year. Does it go to the Pittsburgh transfer, Solomon DeShields? Does it go to the Florida transfer, Scooby Williams? Or the sophomore Damian Sanford, who's been very impressive this offseason? Does he grab a hold of that job? And so that's something that we'll be following going into preseason camp. But, Torian York's the guy that's got probably the most lockdown position.
But even Mike Elko said, him and Trey Zoon and Shamar Turner, you're still battling for spots. And, somebody's going to come grab it from you, but there's still a competition there. So one of the other things I took is just the communication aspect, right?
Yeah.
Talked about, excuse me, sorry, battling a cold here. Jay Bateman and Mike Elka, and kind of, communication aspect there has been higher.
Yeah. We're almost done, Andrew.
We're almost done.
Well, no, I totally agree, and obviously with the new helmet communicators, that'll be a huge deal just for this team in general. That was another topic that was brought up going into this season. Mike Elko's asked if they've used AI yet. That was another question. Yep. He said no. There was some funky questions in there like that. I'm trying to remember all of them. They were all asked about their outfits. All these guys, what's really cool is Andrew's having a cough fit, man. Thoughts and prayers for Andrew.
Yep, absolutely.
But what I like about SEC Media Days is it gives these guys a chance to kind of like flash the NIL money and flash, their
Gucci
style.
Or, talked about Saxon.
Yeah.
Saxon.
I mean, I saw Shamar Turner's watch today, and I'm like, that's probably more expensive than anything I own combined. Yep. So it's cool though. I mean, they deserve it. And, we also got to watch them play a little bit of NCAA football 25.
Yep.
A new video game. Tori York was playing one of the SIDs at Texas A&M. It was A&M versus App State.
Yep.
And I said, this is a little screwed up. Like,
right?
App State, we don't say that name around A&M, or you get egged or tomatoed. Right. But hey, he was up 14-0 last time I checked.
He was.
Good news.
Good news
for the
on
Aggies.
that front. So, well, there you have it. We're going to have plenty more coming on the site, so be sure to stay tuned from SEC Media Days. But otherwise, I think a pretty successful day, pretty quiet day, honestly. Yeah. Not a lot of big storylines, and A&M kind of came in, answered their questions, and on out of here, back to College Station. So, with that,
get better soon.
Yeah, we're fighting through it. We're almost through, right? Until then, we'll see you guys soon. Thanks for joining us. And again, we'll have plenty more over at the site. So please be sure to join us there. And until then, next time, this is Andrew Hattersley and Karels. We'll see you guys soon.